I was a total video game addict. I would play it from day till night. Of course, my mom hated the fact that I always focused on games and not so much on the important stuff. She would always hide my phone so that I wouldn't be able to use it. Every time she confiscated my phone, I was swallowed by boredom. I didn't have anything to do when I couldn't play. Sometimes, if I had free time, I would try to find the spot where my mom hid my phone, but I always failed. But the only thing I knew for sure was that she hid my phone in one specific room. A room with a lot of cabinets filled with stuff and junk, which made it really hard to find my phone. One day, when my mom hid my phone again, I suddenly came up with an idea. I asked myself why I hadn't thought of secretly recording her to see where she hid my phone, so that when she was finally done hiding it somewhere, I could go inside and watch the footage. Then, I could finally get my phone back for good. So, I finally got my phone back, mainly because I needed it for means of communication while in school. Once I got home, I purposely made my mother annoyed until she confiscated it from me. And that's exactly what she did. But before she confiscated it, I quickly put the camera inside the room when she didn't notice. I put the camera in the corner of the room so that I could see everything. I was really excited to know where her secret hiding place was. Finally, she came out of the room, which meant she finished hiding it. When she was finally gone, I went inside the room and grabbed my camera. I quickly played the video. At first, I looked at the duration of the video. It was 7 minutes long. It must have taken a lot of time for her to hide it. I started to skip until I could see my mom inside the room. I skipped for about 6 minutes, but she still wasn't shown on the screen. I was confused. But I told myself that maybe it happened in the first 3 minutes and I missed it. I went to the beginning of the footage again, but failed to find it. I was growing impatient. I played the whole video even though it was long. I finally reached the last few minutes of the video, where I went inside the room to get the camera, but my mother was still not shown. I was really confused. Why wasn't she in the video? But I was clearly in the video when I came in to get the camera. I was getting pretty scared at that point. In person, I saw my mom enter and exit the room with my own 2 eyes. Maybe the camera failed to capture it, but that's impossible. My mom noticed that I was quieter than before. I was stressed and my eyebrows were furrowed. My mom asked me what was wrong. I got my camera and showed her the footage. I explained it to her as well. She said that maybe the camera cut out the footage, but something was really wrong here. I asked her if she did in fact enter the room, and of course she answered yes. I felt goosebumps all over my skin and I was still confused. This might not be the best scary story I have, but it is still running through my mind. What happened? Why is my mom not in the footage? The thing is that in the video, the door opened, but my mom wasn't in the footage. That's the scariest part. When I was around 14 years old, I always went on the internet, and I had this app called Discord. After a while of having Discord, I met a boy named Luke. We started talking for a while, and one day, he asked me what I looked like. Without thinking, I sent him a picture of me. He told me that I was beautiful and that he loved my long dark hair and how I did my eyeliner. I just said thanks, thinking nothing of it. Around a week later, he told me that he loved me, and I felt the same way about him. We had so much in common. Luke was very good looking too. He had a different style from normal people. He wore a mask and always wore the color black. A while later, I realized it started becoming too much for me. He would always ask me personal questions like where I lived, and I told him I lived in California. He also lived in California and said he wanted to run away and meet me. He said that our relationship was going to get real. We kept talking every day, and he got so overprotective and would text me every few minutes. One day, I was home alone because my parents were on a trip to celebrate their 20th anniversary. I didn't mind until it became nighttime. It was so dark outside, and it gave me the chills. I decided to close all the windows and make sure that the doors were locked. I sat in my living room and watched some TV. After around 20 minutes, I heard a knocking sound coming from the window behind me. I realized I didn't pull the blinds over it and that some kids were probably playing tricks on me. I got up and went to the window. As I got closer, my heart kept beating faster and faster. I looked out the window and no one was there. So I just closed it with the blinds and sat back down. After that, I got a message from Luke. He said, "Let's meet up now." I told him I was busy and that I couldn't, but he said that I wasn't and that he could see me. I felt so afraid and told him to stop scaring me because I was home alone, which I really shouldn't have told him. I asked him how he knew where I lived, and he told me that he looked on Snapchat and found my exact location so he could meet up with me whenever he wanted. I was so afraid. I heard a knock on the door, and a teen boy's voice tell me to open the door. It sounded so attractive, and I knew that it had to be Luke. I stayed still and didn't know what to do. I was home alone and no one could defend me when I'm alone. I texted him and told him to leave me alone now. Luke knocked again and said he wasn't going to leave. I finally got up and opened the door. There he was, standing there, ever so tall. He smiled and bit his lip and invited himself in. I told him several times to leave, but he didn't listen. Then he went quiet, and I tapped his back. He ripped his mask off to reveal all the scars he had around his lips. I froze in shock and told him to please leave, now. I was so angry, I didn't even care. Then he smiled creepily and ran downstairs to the kitchen, and I ran after him. He was holding a knife and then ran after me. I ran outside, hid in the bushes, and called 911 as fast as I could. The police arrived quickly. They found him. But what was even more creepy was that he smirked at me when they took him into their car. I called my parents shortly after and told them everything, and they came home. I never want to stay home alone again. It creeps me out. I deleted Discord and blocked him before I did. Having an internet boyfriend will haunt me forever, and I will never forget the creepy smirk he gave me.
Back when I was 21 years old, I was a strategic firearms commander. This meant that I led a team into dangerous situations that oftentimes involves hostages or civilians who carried guns or other deadly weapons. I had a second-in-command firearms commander working beside me. His name was Callum, and he was my best friend. We always hung out outside of work. While on duty, he would always joke around and make us crack a smile, even when we were dealing with pretty distressful stuff. We once had a case where a man had possession of a firearm, and we were assigned to take care of it. Callum seemed particularly eager and jumped out of the van before it even came to a full stop. When the rest of the team reached the scene, the man was already shot. Callum still had the gun in his hand. Soon after, I asked Callum why he was so eager to do it. And then he said he had no specific reason. He was just excited. I believed him because he was my best friend. Later on, when I was looking at the man who was shot, I looked him up on social media and realized that he and Callum added each other on Facebook. Upon further investigation, I realized that there were thousands of messages sent between the two where Callum revealed sensitive information about several operations. I knew that he killed this man on purpose, but I had no way of proving it. He was taken to court and was sentenced to 3 years in jail for perverting the court of justice. I testified against him and was no longer his friend. When I was 24 years old, I was still on the firearms team. All that happened with Callum was behind me, and I was happy with my life. One night I went home really late after work. As I walked to my apartment, I realized that it was trashed. I called the police and they reported it, but there was not much they could do because I didn't have a CCTV. As I got into bed, I saw that there was a note on my bedside table. All it said was, "Remember me?" I instantly recognized Callum's handwriting. And now that he was out of prison, I thought that he would move on with his life. I was so wrong. This was his revenge. The next day, I went to the underground parking lot and I saw that my windscreen was smashed. It was clear that he wasn't over me testifying against him. Soon after, I also saw him near my apartment. I ran after him, but he ignored me and ran away. I tried calling his old number, but it was no longer in service. Then an envelope was sent through my door, and it contained hundreds of photos of me at work, home, and even out with my girlfriend at clubs and restaurants. These were all taken very recently. The last one, though, was a picture of Callum and I from years ago, and on the other side, written with a big red marker, were the words, "You're dead." I reported this as stalking and hoped he would end up back in prison. The police had gone to his listed address, but there was no one there. In fact, all of his bags were packed. I knew he was still in the area somewhere, though. One day I was by myself in an unmarked car, and I saw this Toyota Yaris, and it was driving close behind me. It was my gut instinct to get the plate number checked, and I was going to. But then I got a Priority 1 announcement on the radio saying there was a crazy man on a bus who had a knife and stabbed someone. I turned on my sirens and blue lights and headed to the accident. As I got on the bus, he was already arrested, and the ambulance was already there as well. As I was about to leave the bus, I heard a loud bang, and a man on the bus fell down. He was shot through the window by a man who was wearing a black hoodie. He immediately ran. I ran out of the bus and went to the boot of my car. I got my MP5 SF out, which was a large rifle with sniper capabilities. I ran after the suspect and radioed in. They gave me an order of critical shot, which meant I could shoot to kill the suspect. He ran through the town center and went to the left. I was worried about public safety as he had a large rifle as well. I realized instead of running after him, I needed to get on a roof and shoot down. I went to this building that had views of the right and left. It took me 5 minutes, and I was worried that he would have run away by now. As I got to the roof, I turned my gun to the sniper level. I used the eyepiece to scan, and I saw a man in a black hoodie running. I fired a shot, and he fell to the ground. By the time I got there, more armed policemen came to the area. I was shocked to see Callum. He was the one who followed me in the car behind me, and that shot in the bus was meant for me. But he missed. Callum was dead. I felt sad, but also relieved that this was all over. The man shot in the bus survived, and I was promoted for my diligent work. I'm still working in the force.
This happened to me in 1970s. To be exact, it was November 23rd, 1971. I was 20 years old at the time and was really down on my luck. I was living in Portland, but I'm from Seattle, and I'll be going home very soon. I had lost my job and was about to be evicted from my apartment because I couldn't pay the rent. I will be flying back home to stay with my parents until I could find a new job or somehow get the money for my apartment, which would be very unlikely. I had one night left in my apartment before leaving. I didn't feel like staying home, so I decided to go for a walk and have a drink in a bar. On my way to the bar, I stopped at a convenience store and purchased a lottery ticket. I walked down the street and entered a nearby bar, where I ordered myself a beer. Not long after that, a man came inside and sat next to me and ordered a drink. We got to talking about life and just general conversation when he mentioned he was going to a flight the next day to Seattle. I laughed and asked him, "Wait, flight 305? He laughed and said, "Yeah, that's the one." He asked me why I was heading there. I told him I had money troubles, and incidentally, he said the same thing. He seemed like a nice guy. We talked for about another hour before he decided to call it a night. Unfortunately, I never caught his name. I was about to leave the bar myself shortly after that when I heard over the TV that the lottery numbers would be announced. I decided to stay and check if I had won. Why not? And would you believe it? I won $15,000. Of course, I was beyond belief with shock. And of course, I wouldn't need to go back home because I had money now. The next day, I saw something on the news that a flight had been hijacked and the plane was being held at ransom. It was the same flight I was going to be on. And I couldn't believe it, but the sketch of the guy they described who took the flight hostage was the exact same man I had been talking to in the bar. He used the name D.B. Cooper. If you didn't know, he threatened to explode the plane with a bomb unless he got $200,000, which he did, then jumped out of the plane with the money and parachute and was never seen again. I didn't know why, but I never said anything to anyone. Even if I could, it's not like I knew his real name. It was such a scary coincidence that the only thing that stopped me was the reason why I was in that predicament anyway. I needed money, and then I got some. It's strange how everything works out in life.
This happened when I was a kid. I was in the 5th grade and my friend, let's call him Ethan, invited me over to his place. He lived right by the ocean, and if you walked through the forest for half a mile, you'd reach a nice beach with a diving board. When I got to his house, we hung out, played video games, and talked. You know, typical kid stuff. Then we decided to go to the beach. It wasn't too far away and we knew we could get back in time for dinner, so we set off. To make the trip more adventurous, we decided to bushwhack our own path. After walking a couple of minutes, we hit a tall fence. "Crap!" Ethan exclaimed. "Well, I guess we'll have to go back." Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted something. The fence went about 8 meters long and then stopped. My jaw dropped. There was a house. It was an old cabin with boarded-up windows. The planks were falling off, and you could see the old insulation underneath. It was gray in color and had flecks of blue paint. The fence led up to the side of the house, stopped, and then continued on the other side. What scared me the most was that there was no road. I mean, not even a clearing to get to the road. You'd have to walk 20 minutes. "Kevin, come on!" Ethan yelled from behind me. "Look at this!" I shouted back. Ethan walked up to me, and his jaw dropped. There was no door, just a frame, and peering through the frame, we could see that there was a back door, also with no frame. All we had to do was walk through the house, then we could get to the beach. I looked at Ethan. "Should we do it?" I asked him. He shrugged. "I don't see why not," he responded. Inside the house was dark, despite the sunlight pouring in through the door. We advanced slowly through the house, and Ethan pointed to the door. As we reached the door, I peered up the stairs. I grabbed Ethan and shoved him out the door. "What was it?" he said as soon as we got away. My whole body shook. I must be going mad, I thought to myself. Eventually, I explained it to him. As we reached the door, I wanted to take one last look at the house. I glanced up the stairs and I saw the shadowy outline of a person. All I could see were eyes staring back at me and a crooked grin. Ethan and I took another route back home, and we told Ethan's mom. She laughed at us and said she'd been that way many times and there was no house. And we were angry because she didn't believe us. So we got out our cameras and went back the next day. When we got there was no house. It was just gone. No clearing, nothing. To this day, Ethan and I still wonder what it was. Was that man just a homeless person, or maybe he was something much, much worse? I suggested to Ethan a theory that scares me to this day. I had been reading about Russian folklore, and a page caught my attention. It was a story about a witch named Baba Yaga who had a moving house. She would eat naughty children, and parents used to use it to scare children. Was this a witch? I guess we'll never know for sure.
Hey, yeah, just put the video right there. Thank you.